Black security guard saves child from fire, not knowing it's a billionaire's son. Rain tapped steadily against the wide, spotless windows of Halston Towers, streaking the glass like nature's slow tears. Inside the sleek marble lobby, the air smelled like expensive polish and cold professionalism. It was quiet, unnaturally quiet for a building that housed celebrities, CEOs, and foreign dignitaries. But that was normal at 11:48 p.m. on a Tuesday. Amara Lewis, tall and slender with cocoa brown skin and dark intelligent eyes, sat behind the front desk in her navy blue security uniform, hands clasped tightly in front of her. Her braids were pulled into a neat bun, and the faint shine of lip gloss caught the overhead lights every time she moved. To anyone passing by, she looked calm, focused, professional. But behind that quiet, Amara's mind was racing. She checked the time again, 12 minutes until midnight. Half her shift still lay ahead. She stretched her fingers and glanced at the monitors. Every screen displayed a section of the high-rise interior, hallways, elevators, stairwells, and penthouse doors. Floor 35 flickered. Again. She leaned closer. The footage was scrambled, white lines jittering over a grainy shot of the hallway outside penthouse 3501. Stupid cable, she muttered. Amara made a mental note to report it in the morning. Then she sighed and pulled out her old, beat-up notebook. The cover was cracked, and the edges were frayed from years of flipping. Inside were handwritten notes and sketches, dreams of becoming a fire marshal, floor blueprints, emergency plans. She wasn't just a security guard. She was studying to become something more. Every shift she worked, every lonely night at that marble desk, was a step closer to the future she wanted. But tonight something felt off. There was a strange stillness in the building, a kind of hush that made her skin crawl. Upstairs, on the 35th floor, the penthouse lights glowed warm through the windows. Leo Harrington, a 6-year-old boy with a mop of golden curls and a dimple on one cheek, lay snuggled under his Spider-Man blanket. His nanny, Carla, had just turned off the TV in the den. "I'll be right back, Leo." "Warm milk, just like always," she said, smiling. "Okay," he murmured, eyes already drooping. But behind the fancy plaster walls, sparks danced along a frayed wire. Sparks no one had fixed. Sparks that would change everything. Back downstairs, Amara stared at the screen again. Something about the hallway didn't look right. The lights, they were blinking. "Probably just a surge," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. She stood up. The moment she did, the fire alarm shrieked. Every monitor turned red, and the screen for floor 35 turned black. The fire alarm blared like a banshee, shrill, unrelenting, echoing through every marble corridor in the building. Amara jolted as the red emergency lights pulsed overhead, casting the elegant lobby into a flickering sea of crimson and shadow. "Fire detected." The building's automated voice rang out, calm and robotic. "Evacuate immediately. Fire detected on floor 35. Amara's eyes shot back to the monitors. The screen for floor 35 was now completely black. Her heart punched her ribcage. "Come on, no, not now," she muttered, slamming the control panel button, trying to refresh the feed. Nothing. She reached for her walkie-talkie. "Control, this is Amara from Halston Towers. I have a confirmed fire alarm on the 35th floor. Screen's gone dark. I'm heading up to investigate. Fire department en route." A burst of static. Then, "Roger that. Ladder 22 has been dispatched. ETA 5 minutes." Amara didn't wait for backup. She grabbed the emergency override key and a fire extinguisher from the wall cabinet, slung it over her shoulder, and sprinted toward the stairwell. Her boots slammed against the marble floor, echoing like gunshots as she flew past the gold elevators, already disabled by the alarm. The stairwell door slammed open, the heavy metal groaning in protest. She began to climb. 35 floors, no elevator, no air conditioning. Just concrete steps and adrenaline. By the 15th floor, Amara's legs were burning. By the 25th, sweat dripped from her forehead, stinging her eyes. She stripped off her blazer, tying it around her waist. And by the time she reached the 32nd floor, the smoke was waiting. Thick, acrid, creeping down the stairwell like it had been sent to choke out the living. She pulled her shirt collar over her nose and pushed on. At floor 34, she saw it, smoke billowing through the cracks beneath the door. Her chest tightened, fear and instinct warring in her brain. She paused just long enough to text a quick message to dispatch. Fire confirmed. 35th floor fully engulfed. Proceeding inside. Might be residents. Then she opened the door. The hallway was chaos. Smoke rolled down the ceiling like a living shadow. Alarms wailed from every direction. Lights flickered overhead, some popping as the heat burst their filaments. Flames licked the walls of the penthouse entrance at the far end. Amara dropped low to the floor, breathing through her shirt, staying under the smoke. She could barely see, just shapes and shadows, and a terrifying red glow from the blaze ahead. She called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" No answer. She moved further, gripping the extinguisher, coughing hard now. Then she heard it, a sound that shattered her nerves. A child's voice. Faint, terrified. "Help!" Amara's eyes went wide. "There's a kid in there." She ran. Fire flared across the far wall, dancing over expensive wallpaper and glass light fixtures that exploded like fireworks. She kicked open the door to penthouse 3501. Inside was a furnace. Flames engulfed the grand piano in the foyer. The plush carpet was already reduced to ash. The windows cracked from the heat. But somewhere in that inferno, she heard him. "Help me." She charged in. The smoke clawed at her skin, filled her lungs, but she pushed forward, weaving through collapsing furniture and burning debris. In the far corner, near the grand living room window, she saw him. Leo, curled in a ball, crying, face blackened with soot, his little hands over his ears. "Hey," she screamed. "I'm here. Don't move." The boy looked up. Their eyes locked. Amara dropped to her knees beside him, wrapping her arms around him, shielding his body with her own. "You're gonna be okay," she whispered, voice hoarse. "I've got you." She tried to lift him, but he clung to her, sobbing. "The nanny she left me." Amara's chest twisted. She couldn't focus on that now. She picked him up, cradling his trembling body. The hallway behind her was already collapsing. There was no going back the way she came. "Window," she muttered. "Think." Then she saw it, double-glass doors to the terrace. And below, the faint sound of sirens. The terrace doors were just 20 feet away. 20 feet of blazing carpet, collapsing chandeliers, and falling debris. With Leo clinging to her neck, his face pressed against her shoulder, Amara felt the full weight of his tiny body, and the full terror of what stood between them and survival. "Hold on tight," she whispered, coughing through the smoke. "You hear me? Don't let go, baby. I'm getting you out of here." The boy didn't speak. He just tightened his little arms around her. Amara took a deep breath, then ran. The heat was hell. Flames shot up around her, licking at her boots, nipping at her uniform. The fire roared like it had a voice of its own, a monstrous, hungry scream. The floor beneath her groaned, cracked. She pushed harder. Her shoulders slammed the terrace doors. They didn't budge. Locked. Damn it. She shifted Leo to one arm and grabbed the fire extinguisher strapped to her back. With every ounce of strength left in her, she swung it into the glass. Crash. The doors shattered, raining shards over her boots. Cold air rushed in, momentarily fighting the fire's fury. She stumbled outside. They were 35 stories high. Below, the street was a circus. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars. Spotlights beamed upward like searchlights, and a crowd had formed behind barricades. The ladder wasn't high enough, and the flames were behind them, closing in. There was only one way down. On the ground, Graham Harrington, the billionaire father, arrived seconds before the blast was reported. His limousine screeched to a stop behind the fire trucks. A tall, lean man in his early 40s. He wore a black coat and worry-like armor. His salt-and-pepper hair was drenched from the rain, and his eyes, once cold and calculated from boardroom battles, were wide with raw fear. "Where's my son?" he shouted to the chief. "Where's Leo?" "We're getting reports. Someone's still up there," the fire captain replied. "Female. Might be security." and we think she has a child. Graham's heart slammed against his ribs. That's him. That's my son. Then he looked up and saw her. Amara stood on the edge of the terrace, Leo wrapped in her arms, hair whipping in the wind. The fire raged behind her, casting an eerie orange glow around her silhouette. She saw the firefighters waving, shouting something unintelligible through a megaphone. Then they pointed to the inflatable rescue air cushion, just deployed below. It looked so small from here, so far away. She looked down at the boy. His eyes were locked on hers. "I'm scared," he whispered. She swallowed hard. "Me too." And then she kissed his forehead and held him tighter than she ever thought possible. "This is going to feel like flying, okay?" He nodded, tears soaking her collar. She climbed the railing. Her knees trembled. Her heart felt like it might burst. She whispered a silent prayer. Then she jumped. The air ripped past them like a scream. Wind. Gravity. Time slowed. Then, whump. They hit the cushion, bounced once, and stopped. Alive. The crowd gasped. Firefighters rushed forward. Paramedics pushed through the barricade. Everyone was shouting. Amara couldn't hear any of it. She was lying on her back, coughing, eyes blurry with soot and tears. Leo was on her chest, clinging to her. He was okay. That was all that mattered. Then a shadow fell across them. A man knelt beside her. He wore a soaked suit, and rain dripped from his lashes. But his face was full of emotion, shock, relief, awe. Graham Harrington. "My son," he breathed, reaching for the boy. "Leo." Leo turned and saw him. "Daddy." Graham grabbed him, pulled him into a crushing hug. His face broke, no longer the stern billionaire, but a broken, grateful father. Then his eyes turned to Amara. "You saved him," he said, voice hoarse. "You saved my boy." Amara, still coughing, nodded weakly. "Just doing my job." But in his eyes, something else flickered. Something far more personal, far more lasting. Sunlight spilled through the narrow window, catching the crisp white edges of a hospital sheet. Amara stirred. Her muscles ached. Her throat felt like sandpaper. But the moment her eyes fluttered open, the first thing she saw was a nurse leaning over her with a soft smile and a clipboard in hand. "You're awake," the nurse said kindly. "That's a good sign. Welcome back." Amara blinked, disoriented. Her voice came out rough. "Where?" "St. Germain's. You inhaled a lot of smoke. You've been unconscious about 12 hours. Amara sat up too fast, then winced, grabbing her ribs. "Easy," the nurse warned, adjusting her fore. "You've got bruising, smoke inhalation, and minor burns. But you're lucky. Very lucky." Memory hit her like a freight train. The fire. The boy. "Leo," she gasped. "The little boy, he's okay, right?" The nurse smiled wider. "He's perfectly fine. A little shaken up, but he hasn't stopped asking about you since he got here. And neither has his father." Before Amara could respond, the nurse stepped aside. In the doorway stood Graham Harrington. Tailored gray coat, unshaven jaw, tired eyes. He looked like a man who'd survived a war and had come back changed. Amara's heart thudded. "May I?" he asked, stepping inside slowly. She nodded, suddenly aware of how tangled her hospital gown looked and how dry her lips were. But he didn't seem to notice any of that. He came to her bedside and sat in the visitor chair, arms resting on his knees. "I needed to see you," he said. Amara cleared her throat. "How's Leo?" Graham smiled faintly. "Sleeping. He won't stop talking about how brave you are. He says you flew through fire like a superhero." Amara chuckled softly, her voice raspy. "Hardly. I was scared out of my mind." "But you didn't freeze. You didn't run. You saved my son," Graham said, his voice low, heavy with emotion. "I owe you everything." She shifted uncomfortably, used to fading into the background, not standing in the spotlight. "I was just doing what I had to." He was all alone up there. Graham's eyes searched hers. "Not everyone would have gone back into that fire. But you did. For a child you didn't even know." He hesitated, then added, "Most people only see me as money. You didn't." Amara blinked. "I didn't even know who you were." A pause. Then, for the first time since the chaos, Graham laughed. Not loudly, Not like a man used to joy, but like someone finally exhaling after years of holding his breath. I'm Graham Harrington, widower, tech CEO, billionaire. But none of that mattered last night, he said, his voice softer now. What mattered was my boy, and that someone chose to protect him like her own. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. He placed it gently on her lap. What's this? She asked. Something temporary, he said. Until we talk again. You're going to need time to recover. You're going to need a new job, too, because there's no way I'm letting you go back to sitting behind a lobby desk. Amara's brows lifted. I want to help, he said. Not just with money. I mean anything. Career, school, whatever you dream of. You saved the most important person in my life. The least I can do is ask what you want now. Meanwhile, outside the hospital doors, the media had arrived in full force. Unknown security guard saves billionaire's son in dramatic fire rescue. Heroic act by young black woman captivates the nation. Her name, Amara Lewis, was now trending on every platform. Videos of her jump from the penthouse terrace had gone viral. News outlets were calling her the angel in the flames. But inside her quiet hospital room, none of that mattered yet. Only two people sat there. One who had lost everything once and nearly lost it again, and another who had nothing to her name, but had given everything without asking for a thing in return. In that room, something invisible but undeniable began to take root. Not gratitude, not guilt, something warmer, slower, something beginning. When Amara was discharged 3 days later, nothing could have prepared her for what waited outside. The hospital's front door slid open, and a wall of cameras and microphones surged forward. Amara, how does it feel to be a hero? Did you know who the child was when you ran into the fire? Are you aware you've been nominated for a Civil Bravery Medal? Amara froze. She was wearing borrowed jeans, a hoodie too big for her small frame, and her braids were tied back loosely. The hospital had given her a mask and sunglasses, but it wasn't enough. The world knew her face now. A nurse rushed forward and helped her into a black SUV, waiting at the curb. The driver nodded silently, then pulled away from the madness. Amara leaned back into the seat and closed her eyes, heart thudding. She wasn't used to this. She wasn't chasing clout. She wasn't an influencer. Just a security guard from the South Side, with a record of being invisible. Now, she was all over the internet. At her tiny studio apartment in the West End, everything felt smaller. Even after her neighbor screamed in surprise and offered her free lasagna. Even after a local journalist tried to slide a note under her door offering an exclusive interview. It didn't feel real. She turned on her prepaid phone. The notifications were wild. Dozens of missed calls. Unknown numbers. Brands offering deals. Influencers begging for collabs. She put it on airplane mode. Too much. Too fast. She needed quiet. The next morning, a knock on her door came just after sunrise. She opened it, still in her robe. Graham Harrington stood there, dressed in a black peacoat, holding a tray with 2 coffees and a paper bag. I figured you might not answer my texts, he said, so I brought breakfast. Amara blinked at him, speechless. No press. No cameras. Just me, he added. And donuts. He followed her into the cramped kitchen, completely unfazed by the chipped countertops or mismatched dishes. He looked around. It's small. I call it cozy, she replied, raising a brow. He smiled. It's clean. That counts. Amara poured the coffee and tried to act normal, but her hands were shaking. Here he was, a billionaire, sitting at her $15 second-hand dining table like they were old friends. I wanted to say thank you again, he said, but I also came for something more. She looked at him carefully. What's that? My son won't stop asking about you. He keeps asking if you're okay, if you can come over and visit. And to be honest, his voice softened. So do I. Amara's heart skipped. She stirred her coffee. Graham, I don't know if I'm built for the spotlight, or the attention, or whatever's happening now. You're not built for it, he said. You earned it. And all of this. The cameras, the press, it'll pass. But I don't want you to think you're alone in it. He reached into his coat again and handed her another envelope, thicker this time. "What is this now?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "It's not a handout," he said. "It's a job offer." She blinked. "Head of security," he continued, "at my private estate. 6-figure salary. Full medical. A guest suite if you want it. You'd be close to Leo. And to me." She stared at him. "You want me to come live in your mansion?" she asked, stunned. "I want to give you something better than this," he said, motioning to the apartment. "You saved our lives. Let me give you a chance to live yours." That night, Amara sat by her window, looking out over the lights of the city. Her phone buzzed Leo's voice message. "Hi, Miss Amara. Daddy says you might come live with us. I hope you do. I miss you. You're my hero." She covered her mouth with her hand, then whispered to herself, "What if I said yes?" She didn't know it yet, but her life was already changing forever. And this invitation? It was the beginning of something far greater than a new job. It was the beginning of family. The Harrington estate didn't look like the kind of place Amara belonged, at least not to her. It was perched on a hill just outside the city, wrapped in clean white stone and tall windows. Security gates opened with a quiet hum as Graham's driver pulled up to the front, revealing a wide circular driveway and a fountain that seemed to dance in the morning sun. Amara stepped out, dressed in the best outfit she owned, a navy blue blazer, black slacks, and her thick braids tied back neatly. Her fingers curled tight around the strap of her bag. This wasn't just about the job. It was about stepping into a new life. And she wasn't sure she deserved it. But then the front door burst open, and Leo came running. "Miss Amara." He threw himself into her arms with such force she nearly lost her balance. "You're really here," he said breathlessly. "Daddy said you might come, but I didn't believe him." She smiled down at the boy, hugging him tight. "I promised I'd come see you, didn't I?" "You don't just have to see me," he said proudly. "You live here now." Behind him, Graham appeared, dressed in a simple sweater and slacks. He looked every bit the kind of man who ran empires and built tech giants. But the look in his eyes wasn't corporate today. It was personal. "I hope you're ready," he said gently. "There's a whole wing we set up for you. Quiet, private. But Leo's already made a list of the games he wants to play with you." She laughed softly. "Lead the way, then." Over the weeks that followed, Amara slipped into a routine she never thought possible. Mornings began with coffee on the garden terrace. Afternoons spent watching Leo run through the fields, laughing, climbing trees, dragging her into his endless games. And evenings? Evenings were the quietest. Dinner at the long oak table often ended with the three of them sitting on the couch, Amara helping Leo with puzzles, Graham sipping wine, watching them with a softness in his eyes that said more than words ever could. But it wasn't all smooth. There were moments of doubt, of discomfort. She didn't understand his world of art auctions and board meetings. And he didn't always understand hers, the streets, the struggle, the grind. But slowly, they bridged that gap. Late-night conversations turned deeper. He told her about his late wife, how she died from cancer 3 years ago, how he shut down after that, raising Leo on autopilot. "I never thought I'd open my heart again," Graham said one night, his voice low. "But then you ran into that fire. And since then, I haven't been able to stop thinking about you." Amara's breath caught. "I'm not like her," she said quietly. "I'm not classy. I didn't go to private schools. I'm just—" "You're exactly what I need," he interrupted, reaching for her hand. "You're brave. You're real. And every day you remind me what it means to feel again." One evening, weeks later, Graham took her and Leo out to the hilltop behind the estate. He laid out a blanket. Leo brought snacks. The sunset burned gold behind them, and as the wind played with her braids, Graham turned to her with something shining in his eyes. "I don't want to go another day without telling you this," he said. "You didn't just save Leo. You saved me too." She blinked, heart hammering. "I know you didn't ask for this," he continued. "You didn't chase fame or money, but you walked through fire for us. You showed up, and I want to build a life with someone like that." He pulled a small box from his coat, opened it, Inside, no diamond, no flashy gem, just a simple gold band. Not a proposal, he said. Not yet, but a promise that you belong here, that we're in this together, me, you, and Leo, as a family. Tears sprang to her eyes. She nodded, voice breaking. I'd like that, she whispered. 1 year later, a summer morning bloomed across the estate. Amara stood in the garden in a flowing white dress, a flower tucked behind her ear. Beside her, Leo held her hand tightly, smiling wide. Graham approached in a crisp linen suit, eyes never leaving hers. They weren't rushing things. They hadn't built a fairy tale overnight, but they built something real. And as vows were exchanged beneath an arch of roses, cameras rolling quietly in the background, not for fame, but for memory, Amara looked around at the life she had now. Not for the first time. She whispered a quiet thank you to the universe. From security guard to family, from fire to forever, she had found her home. At last.